about the resolution power, which depends on the number of receptors that the system has. This is a very obvious aspect. Of course, the more sample points you have in an image, the higher the resolution of your image. And this is exemplified here in an image with 400 pixels up to 160,000 pixels. And the more pixels there are, the more sampling there is, the higher the resolution. Of course, up to a given limit, and that is the limit of the sensory system itself. We also mentioned that the resolution is not something that's common. The resolution is not something which is exactly the same throughout the nervous system, and different parts of the receptor surface have different resolution. And we mentioned briefly the classical example from the homunculus. You know, we have more receptors at the tip of our fingers. Actually, at the tip, there are more than at the fingers and the palm of the hand. We have more receptors on the face, especially around the somatosensory receptors, especially around the lips, etc., etc. In the visual system, which is also something we'll talk about, we have a region which is called the fovea, where it has the highest number of receptors and therefore also the highest acuity of vision. So this is obvious. The more receptors there is, the higher the resolution. And this also relates to the processing that we talked about in feed forward, in the feed forward direction, where different stations along the hierarchy of the brain is normally you're losing information on one hand, but the information becomes more and more abstract and general. So if you look at early sensory stations, like V1, which we will discuss today, you will see that neurons are sensitive to features or very basic features that have to do with high resolution, things like orientation of the bars, and Hubel and Wiesel found these slit sensitive neurons. And as you go higher and higher along the hierarchy, from V1 to higher brain regions, you'll see neurons responding to circles, objects, colors, shapes, until you get to Simpson neurons higher, deep into the hierarchy, okay? So normally lower stations have higher resolution or higher resolving power in the receptor fields of their neurons. And this is basically where we ended up last time, talking about the number of sampling. So the question becomes, how much do you need to sample in order to resolve in space something? Okay, it's going to be an auditory stimulus, a visual stimulus. So how many receptors do we need in order to resolve what? And this in turn will determine the resolution of the sensory system that we're talking about. Okay? So how much do we need to sample? Of course, like I said, the higher sampling, the higher the resolution. But of course, in order to sample given frequency or a given object, in this case, we're talking about bound-limited signals. So if the rate of a change of a stimulus is bounded, so for example, we have some kind of a sine wave, and we would like to recover the frequency of this sine wave. The question becomes, how much do we need to sample this sine wave with a given frequency in order to fully resolve this bounded signal?
I don't understand what is it in practice. Like, what does it represent? The environment, how much of stimulus I need in order to actually see or hear it, or what are...
On the contrary, how much can you see, and with this resolution of seeing, with this sampling rate, how much can you actually resolve? Yes, perceive, okay? Resolve, this is now physics. I'm talking about the actual physics of sampling a given point.
It's not perception, it's not the information that I'm adding.
Yeah, so we'll see that we can be better than the physical demands of what we're supposed to, what our senses can give us. But we're going to start with first of the basics, okay? I told you that the more sampling there is, the better it is. That's obvious. But of course, we don't want to sample in excess a given stimulus, because then it will be just be a waste of metabolic energy, okay? But the question is, how much can we resolve? And there is a simple rule, which is called the Nyquist rate. Those of you who are from physics or ever heard or did signal processing know about this much more than I do. So if a rate of change of a stimulus is bounded, sorry. So let's say you have a certain sine wave, and you want to know what is the frequency of this sine wave. How many sampling points do you need in order to fully resolve the frequency of this sine wave? Okay? So the Nyquist sampling rate rule tells you that you need at least twice the highest rate, the highest change in frequency, will be enough to get perfect reconstruction of the stimulus. Okay, so if you have a 10 hertz wave, you need to sample it twice as much in order to recapture the frequency of the stimulus. Now, it's not enough to do twice exactly, because if you sample, let's say, this is the sine wave, okay, so the period repeats itself every cycle. If you sample it twice the sampling weight on the diagonal here, you get a flat line, and that won't really capture the full sine wave. But if you do a little more, if you sample it in different places, it will be enough. If you sample it a little more, you will still be able now to capture the frequency change of the stimulus itself. One sec. It's not enough to capture the full amplitude, but it's enough to capture, if you go just a bit, tiny bit, over twice the sampling rate, you will capture the change in frequency. If you do it slower, you will cause what's called aliasing. So if your sample now here, this is an example of 5 megahertz wave, and you're sampling it only at 1 megahertz, okay? You see that the sampling is at 1, which is 1/5 of the highest frequency of the signal, and then you'll get an aliasing signal, which is distorting the actual signal. Yeah, you have a question.
Yes. Let's say I don't know the frequency. I've got the sample. I've sampled.
Yes.
I don't know the frequency. So I have to, how do I know to do double the highest rate?
No, you don't need to know. I'm just saying our system has a given sampling rate, okay? And the best you can do is 1/2 of that. Okay, that's the best you can do with your, and this is because of this Nyquist rate rule. You cannot do better than that. Again, in order to resolve the full amplitude, etc., you will need more, and the rule of thumb in signal processing is about 5 times higher. Okay, if you go 5 times higher than the frequency, you can resolve most of the signal in high accuracy. So what does this mean in terms of the visual system, for example? Okay, so now in each sense, you need to go, what is the energy, what is the, what exactly can we sample, etc. So let's look, for example, at the visual system. A visual system, any questions? No, a visual system, a spot of light, when it goes through a slit, in our case the pupil of our eye, will cause all kinds of diffractions, interactions of the wavelengths of light, etc. If we're going to do microscopy, we can speak about this. What? I did not bring my tie and my best jacket, huh? Oh my God, okay, so I will...
So thank you so much. Let's just go on.
Oh la la, this is a surprise, huh? Yeah, so they don't know I am talking bullshit, huh? In class. Oh my God, this is scary. Okay, so I'm going to talk about physics, and I'm not a physicist, so watch out. But anyway, these things you can learn in microscopy if you're doing the methods course. Maybe you are talking a little bit about this. Anyway, point of light in the world will emit radiation, and these rays or waves of light will cross into the pupil, and if they cross a slit, and in this case we also have an objective in our eye, they will cause what we call a point spread function. You won't have a perfect spot, even if the spot is infinitely small. You will get what we call a point spread function. So it will be the highest intensity will be in the middle, where it falls on the retina in this case, and you will have some kind of an angle, and this point spread function will have a width and some kind of characteristics. Okay? The definition of resolution is whether I can differentiate whether it's 1 point or 2 points in space. Okay, now I'm talking about spatial resolution in vision, and I want to see if I can differentiate these 2 points in space. And each of these points will cause a different point spread function on the retina, and the question is, how can I differentiate between these 2 points? The Rayleigh criteria, and again, you don't need to know all of these details, will tell you that 2 points or lines are just resolved if the peak of the point spread function lies on the first trough of the other point spread function. The trough is this is the trough of the first point. Okay, so there's a peak and the troughs of these point spread functions. Actually, it's like a wave. It's something that is when you look at it in the microscope, it's something like this. So the spot of light that falls onto a surface. So you'll have a peak with highest intensity in the middle. It will have a trough where waves of light interfere. And you'll have these concentric circles, which is again called the point spread function if you cut it in the middle like you saw before. Okay, and the Rayleigh criteria states that you can resolve these points. The closest the point spread function have to be is that if the peak of one point spread function is at the trough of the first point spread function. Only then you can resolve these 2 points. If they are closer together, so the peak of this falls right anywhere between here and the middle of the point spread function, you will observe this as a single point, and you can't really separate the 2 points. Okay, so now we want to know how much are these point spread functions on the retina of our eye, of the human eye. So we can calculate this. Okay, and we're not going to go again into the calculations too much, but the width of a point spread function is a factor of the wavelength of light and the diameter of the pupil of the eye. Okay, so we can actually calculate the size of these point spread functions. Excuse me?
Changes? The pupil of the eye changes?
No. Let's think that it's just a given diameter of the pupil of the eye, and light going in, a spot of light, a perfect spot of light goes in through this pupil. It will cause a given point spread function, which can be calculated and is affected by the diameter of the pupil and the wavelength of light. Okay, and we can actually calculate this. So this is how it looks like. I showed you when you look at it on a point on a surface in a microscope. And this is, just basic algebra. Let's say you take a wavelength of light of 600 nanometer, almost reddish color. We know that the aperture width of the pupil is about 6 millimeters, so we can calculate the angular width of the point spread function. And if we want to translate this angular width into real diameter, we get something like 1 micrometer. So the width of a point spread function is 1 micrometer on the retina of a human eye. Okay? So that's the best you can do. You just simply, by the laws of physics, you cannot do better than 1 micrometer. because of physical constraints.
Other animals can't either?
So,
Other animals, is there any difference in the stability between different
animals, yes, absolutely. We'll talk, I'll just mention it on the fly, but humans as good as it goes, roughly, okay?
So how it changes the function-wise? Because we're talking about is their eye different or?
Yeah, so the eye can be different, the shape of the eye can be different, the size of the eye, the size of the pupil, etc., the wavelengths that you see, so your resolution is better at lower wavelengths, etc., etc., okay? But this also depends, and now you look, so the best a human eye can do based on physics is every 1 micrometer. But when you look at the density of the receptors, at the highest density of the fovea, it's about 200,000 millimeters square, or about a photoreceptor every 2 micrometers. So we're not actually sampling at the highest possible rate. In order to resolve 1 micrometer, we would have to have a photoreceptor every half. Okay? We need to be double the distance that we are in order to fit the Nyquist rate, okay, sampling rate. But we see that we are at about 1/4 of that. So we're only at 2 micrometer, which is not ideal. But you have to think that, the biology is not perfect physics. You look at the eye, there are other distortions in the eyes, fluids, etc., all kinds of lenses, you name it, light comes here and there. So we're not working at the perfect Nyquist, sorry. Okay? So in fact, we're sampling at lower rate than the Nyquist in our eyes, and yet we are in the animal kingdom almost as good as it goes. So human resolution, visual resolution, visual acuity is almost the best in humans. So some birds of prey are better, eagles are better, for example, than we are, but we're not as bad, okay? We're doing actually pretty well. Okay.
Sorry, I don't understand about the 1 micrometer. Doesn't that depend on the distance between the light source and the eye, or the object and the eye?
Yeah. So, but no. So if you take a spot of light and you have it, it radiates. It just radiates in an even manner, okay, in space. Now you can actually your focus can go infinitely until it fades away, but it doesn't really matter. We can focus at different distances. It matters in terms of the focus of the lens, but not in terms of the resolution. Take a point, put it here or there. If it's a single point in space, normally it is not. It will radiate in perfect waves, and those waves will travel forward. The problems begin when they hit the slit of the pupil, and then the waves start to break, refractions, and all kinds of other goodies in optics, which cause them not to fall as a perfect spot on the surface of the retina. Okay, and you get these point start functions. So now this translates, of course, to a distance, the resolution. Your resolution at a given distance is higher than the resolution at longer distances. But this translates at the retina. So your reference point is at the retina, 1 micron apart for a given point. Okay, for a perfect ray of light coming into your pupil. And that's the absolute best we can do. Okay, so normally when we're talking about good vision, it's about 1 minute of arc. So normally when you go to the eye doctor, you see these letters. And this is, normally they put it, 6 meters away or something. And in order to resolve that this is the letter E, you need to resolve about 1 minute of arc in terms of the angle. Yeah, so this is just a measurement of an angle, okay? So I don't know, in a circle there are 21,000 minutes of arc or something like that. It's a very tiny angle at the surface of the retina, and if we calculate, we just calculated before, because we're on TV, it's, we don't want to do, my mother told me never do math on television, in public. Never kiss a girl and never do math in public. That's not mine. I heard this from a lecture at the SFM. Anyway, whatever. So the 1 micron is about 20 seconds of arc. So it's 1/3 of a minute. And we can resolve about 1 minute of arc. Okay? Sorry. Which is here. And this gives you about 1 minute of arc. Again, 20 seconds of arc is 1 micron, so 3 microns at the retina, something like that. That's one of the legs of this ledger. And this translates to about an inch or something like that, which is held 30 centimeters from your eye. Anyway, 6-to-6 vision, 6-on-6 visions is defined so what a normal person can resolve from 6 meters. And if everything's well, it's great. If it goes down, you'll have 6/12, 6/20, etc. Okay, that said, so we have limits of the spatial resolution based on the physics of the world, okay? For example, waves of photons of light, but also the, how many receptors we have on the surface of the retina. And these are limited by the Nyquist rate. You can't go better than that. However, in reality, we can see many aspects of what we call hyperacuity, meaning that we can resolve better than the limits that we just talked about. Okay, one classical example is Vernier lines. Okay, so if I give you a point which is, side by side to differentiate, to resolve 2 points which is one next to each other, you will not be able to resolve that. But if I put a line and a second one just next to it, you'll get better resolution that you can do with the 2 points. And this has to do with processes which are more sophisticated. Okay? And these are things you will talk about in the course. Okay? You'll see this when you go back to this lecture, you will talk. So, for example, hearing works with hyperacuity. So if you look at the bandwidth of the receptors in the cochlea, in the ear, it's about 1/4 of an octave, which is about 100 hertz at a kilohertz. But in fact, we can resolve perceptually 5 hertz from a kilohertz, meaning that we work in hyperacuity. Okay? Color vision as well works with hyperacuity. This has to do with knowledge about the world and learning and all kinds of fancy algorithms that make us be better than the physical limits of the system. Yes?
Does it involve the processing of few pictures instead of only one?
Yes, so it involves several lines and the knowledge, prior knowledge about the first line, and then you compare it to the other line, etc., etc. But we're not going to talk about this now, okay? Just again to give you a feeling about what are we going to talk about this course in this context. Okay, the other filter is not the spatial filter, it's rather, and again, spatial filter is how many neurons you have, how many receptor cells you have on the surface, what's their density, etc., etc. How many receptor fields, how much overlap you have between receptor fields, etc. The other limitation is temporal limitations, which limit the temporal resolution, of course, of the system. And temporal resolution is limited from above and from below. What I mean by that is neurons have time constants of receptor cells because of the membrane. Okay, so they can, rise up at a given dynamics, at a given rate. Or if, a photon hits the photoreceptor, a protein, or an odorant hits the receptor at the surface membrane, it causes some kind of second messenger cascade. This takes time. These events limit the temporal resolution that we can sense the world. And there are also other limitations, things like adaptation, synaptic depressions, and other events that do not allow us, we can be as fast as this, but we cannot go as fast for a long time. Okay, things like adaptation and depression will limit ourselves, we limit our resources to go fast. Yeah.
So it sounds, intuitively
Yeah, so sound is a very special case, okay? We can do envelope coding at about 100 hertz, which is the classical number, okay, in vision. Also, we can do about somatosensation about 100 hertz, okay, of frequency following. However, the auditory system has all kinds of great phenomena, things like phase locking, which allows us to go up to 10 kilohertz. Okay, and these are processes that allow us, for example, to differentiate if a sound comes from the left or the right. You will learn about that as well. Okay, but again, generally speaking, so if we wrap up what we talked about until now, we talked about very basic concepts of sensory processing. It started by psychologists, etc., to quantify perceptions, and in the last 60 years, we also have sensory physiology that allows us to record from neurons, etc., but all of these have to be in the perspective of what are the limits, the physical limits of the system, and the physical parameter that we want to perceive. Questions up to here? Yeah. The just noticeable difference, actually, we can, the perceptual GND, and this is actually a mystery, okay, why we do not perform at the best of our power. So I'll tell you, you can resolve these two different frequencies or this image, etc., but if you sit down and you practice, you can actually get better and better at what you do. But this normally has to do with plasticity, which is not at the receptor surface, but rather in the central nervous system. Why are we not functioning at the best possible performance?
Well, it has to do with the bias that you talked about. Like that in some cases we will be more inclined to detect or not detect.
Actually, when we talked last time about the D prime of how good we can differentiate two different stimuli, how good the test is, this is insensitive to the biases. D prime, for example, is some kind of quantification which is insensitive to the bias, but of course, all kinds of psychological processes, cognitive processes, have huge impact on our perception. Okay, attention, things like that, and all the biases that you mentioned. So, eventually, to understand the brain, it's not enough to understand physics, not enough to understand biology, the sensory physiology. You also have to understand cognitive processes, etc. So, this is why we're all holding hands together and bringing you into the interdisciplinary Center for Brain Sciences. So we can learn from the theoreticians, the psychologists, the biologists, physicists, etc. Okay? Of course, most of the fun is in the biology, but I am biased.
Most of your bias. Can you explain?
Absolutely.
What's envelope coding?
Yeah, so when you hear sounds, etc., there are differences in the amplitude modulation and frequency modulation of sounds. Okay, so I would say this is the AM envelopes. So if I sing and I change my, the amplitude of my voice, you can detect at about 100 hertz. Okay? Yeah.
If I understand it correctly, so if in the vision domain, if I gaze at something that changes faster than 100 hertz,
Yeah.
I won't be able to notice.
Yes, your nervous system cannot follow the change if it goes over 100 hertz. Well, okay. This summarizes the first part of the talk. How are we now? 30 minutes. I suggest that we take the 10-minute break now. And then when you come back, we do a circle and we talk about the paper. And what we're going to do is we're going to go one by one and discuss the figures. Easy. So let's take 5 to 10, and organize a nice circle. And we're going to talk about our beautiful paper.
גם משתמש פעם פעמים. בגלל המקומות דגימה השונים, אם זה לא תופס מספיק, אז יש יכול להיות לך כמה סוגים של דגימה שנתפסים. עכשיו, הוא אומר, בהקשר של מערכות הראייה שלנו, יש לנו איזושהי רמה של דגימה. אם נדע את קצב הדגימה של עצמנו, נוכל לדעת מה המקסימום שאנחנו יכולים לתפוס. כי קצב הדגימה שלנו...
circle, not like that. A circle that I see everybody's face, we can hold hands.
Discussion, right?
No. Just flow with the feeling. Okay, so this is a wonderful paper. I read it this morning again. Every year I read it, and I enjoy it every time, again and again. Like I said, cited over 10,000 times. Eventually got him the Nobel Prize winning, the Nobel Prize in Physiology for their contributions in understanding the visual system. And basically what I want to do is have you talk, not me. And if you're too shy, I can just choose a name, and we go one by one. And most of us will talk, some of us don't. And if you did not, the idea is that you have to explain the paper or parts of it. We'll go figure by figure. And if something is not clear, we should talk about it. Okay? Great. So the paper has 3 parts. So what is the paper about? Let's say Owen. Who is Owen?
Me.
Alan Owen.
Alan.
What is the paper about? What do we see in the image?
Okay, in the image itself,
What is the paper about?
the paper is about, I'll start with that. Basically, 2 scientists, Hubble and Weasel or something like that.
David and Torsten.
Okay, David. They experimented on a cat's brain, or actually more like on a cat's retina, on its eye, and they put, basically, they figure that slits, the most effective slits or edges of light on either a black background or the opposite are the most effective stimulus for the retina. So they put a, what is it called?
So
Electrode.
before we go into the details, what is the take-home message from the paper?
Take-home message from the paper?
What is the most important? Why did they get the Nobel Prize?
Why did they get the
Would
Nobel
you
Prize?
give them the Nobel Prize?
That was a really, those are really smart scientists, which I'm gonna be hopefully soon, and I tell you exactly why. But let me, I can sum up some points, but I can't tell you exactly what's the most important thing. I can tell you they categorize the cells to 2 types, which is simple and complex, which is dependent on the what is it called, the excitatory or inhibitory.
Okay, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
So the first thing that we are in 1960, we know basically nothing about the brain. It's a black box. These cool scientists in Harvard, they get their electrodes and they stick it into the brain for the first time. This is magic, okay? We're going to actually the first one before them was done on Mountcastle. There are others who did the recording, but in a very similar way, done on Mountcastle, and started to describe the basic features of the visual cortex. But what else is like the most dramatic thing that?
I think the dramatic thing is basically we scale from simple to abstract. I mean, when you have like the
they demonstrated like from the when they have this visual fields and the orientation. So you have, let's say, you have the cells before that in the layer.
The geniculate, lateral geniculate neuron.
Okay, however you pronounce it. Yeah, so basically when we had in the lecture this this scale from abstract concepts to very, let's say, to basically the symbols which falls in the retina. And they basically discovered, or let's say, suggested, had strong indication of this path in between. So they had this, let's say, from the simple fields, from the ganglion, yeah, cells to the the simple cells, and then they on the comment they first of all they observed that these gradations exist in reality, not just like a theoretical concept. And second, they also suggested like how these cells could be connected, how you can really receive this pattern what they recorded by combining the cells around.
So,
Like, I think that is the major thing, but another important thing is the idea of the hypercolumn. That I think they referenced it here, or I read it in like that it's very similar to what Mount Chappell found a few years before that in the somatosensory cortex, and like it's really interesting to start generalizing what's similar between different areas of the cortex. They didn't yet describe which layer attaches to which layer, but the foundation of that is saying this area is specific to some area of the retina, and that they do describe like that all the orientations are one next to each other.
So we are, we're first time in a black box in front of us. We're starting to describe features. We're actually finding visual features like orientation lines and things like that. And it's not only receptive fields, and we're starting to put this into some kind of conceptual framework together on how the brain is organized. Maybe this has an impact, maybe not. But also the nice thing about this is what again your name?
Daniel.
Daniel said is that they are trying to explain the observation and how one hierarchy can explain the other hierarchy in a very, very, very simplified way, a feed-forward model, which we will look at. But and this is like the ABC of sensory neuroscience. Of course, we now know about recurrent connections, local connectivity, 100 million things that are. But largely speaking, they were also true. So you go into the visual cortex today, you can find very clearly orientations here in each and every answer. Not in all animals you find the beautiful hypercolumns and columnar organization. Yeah.
They suggested that in the paper. They didn't say it was a fact. They suggested. They said it was their theory. So
the columns.
No, not the columns. The columns. That's a fact. They saw the columns that they're like not a fact obviously, but you can see that there's a pattern. What I'm saying is how they explain the complex hierarchy.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
No, it's not proven even today.
Okay, that's exactly what I wanted to ask.
Okay, it's 2016, and we still did not prove that this is the way a complex or a simple cell is gets its response profile.
It's proven that it's not.
Absolutely. So we know much more of that, but still, empirically, we're not in a position today to record from a single neuron and all of its synaptic inputs simultaneously, and we cannot reconstruct it inside. Okay, so some people, like the models that Dan Segal is doing, etc., is trying, based on all kinds of statistical rules, to imply that. But in practice, we've never been able to record from a single neuron and all of its thousands and thousands of inputs to say how exactly the response profile arose. But this was the first initial description of very simplified feed-forward model, and we now know that we get feedback, cortical connections are important, kinds of aspects of the physics of the cell, etc., that we cannot really explain this. But again, this was the first time they recorded it. Okay, so what do we see in the picture? Let's brainstem, this is cerebellum. These are the different hemispheres of the cortex. And this is the beautiful cortex on one side. Okay, what else do we see? What are the dots here? This is the penetration site, okay, where they stuck their electrodes into the brain.
Which corresponds?
You're looking from the top. This is a bird's eye view on the top of the brain, okay? From the top, this is back, this is front, okay? And these are the penetration sites where so you have a cap, they anesthetize the cap, they open the skull, and they stick an electrode here while they show them the cap, the images on the screen. Okay, that's the experimental procedure. And when we will have the last 5 minutes of this discussion, I'll just show you a movie on the recordings. Okay, so let's start. They're recording. With what are they recording? What kind of recording method they're using? Extracellular electrodes. Okay? Which gives you what kind of information it gives you about the neurons in the brain?
Unit.
What is the unit?
Unit is pseudoneuron. They don't know what it is, but they feel like a bit of activity around the.
So most likely it's information from what? 1, 2, 3, 5 neurons? 1 neuron.
No, after sorting of spiking, it's 1 neuron.
Okay, so there are different types of electrodes. You can go into the cell, stick it into the membrane and get an intercellular measurement. Here it's measurements from the extracellular environment. And if your sealing is good with the electrode, if you get close enough to a membrane or the cell, you can get the spiking activity of the cell. Sometimes they can even get 2 or even 3 spikes simultaneously. And then you do all kinds of, you can clean it up, and they also report that they record the extracellular activity. Any one of you ever recorded with the microelectrodes from the brain? No. What? You did. What's the experience like?
Really hard.
It's hard? What did you record from?
Octopus and
Octopus. When I recorded, I worked on different animals, and I worked on also on the stomatogastric nervous system. This is the system on the stomach of the lobster. This is a system that gives you rhythms. It's chewing and it's thought to be a model for, walking and all kinds of rhythmic behaviors. And when we were recording, so it gives the spikes. You see some the sparkling the spikes. You will hear that. I'll show you, and my boss will go to the room and we will tell some friends. This is the reason of life of this spike. So it's a wonderful, wonderful experience to hear the live neurons of the brain spiking and recording. You are all welcome to the lab to hear about it. Okay, so what do we see? Let's say Noam. Who is Noam? Noam, what do we see in A and B?
Those are receptive field of the geniculate body or the retinal cells.
Okay.
Not the cortex.
Okay, so let's say cortex. Where is visual? What's the first station? The photons, they fall on the retina, like we discussed. Then there are all kinds of neurons you will learn about, photoreceptor cells, other cells. There's beautiful structure, and they send the retinal ganglion cells from the retina, not the photoreceptors. They send axons to the LGN, lateral geniculate nucleus, and these receptor fields are of the LGN. Okay? And these neurons send their axons to the visual cortex. Okay, so basically we are just a few synapses away from the
So
cortex.
A is like the X are statutory neurons.
Excitatory neurons.
Statutory area with a receptive field.
Okay, what is the receptor field?
Is the place in the visual with
In the visual world?
that cell side where we have it.
Okay, so each neuron is looking at a specific part of the world. in the retina, for example, this neuron will be responsive, whatever its responses, we'll talk about that, to a very specific part of the world. It can be in the center, on the top, whatever. Okay? This is called the receptive field of the neuron. Okay? And that's everything. This is not shown here. You cannot see it completely based to the real coordinates, but it has a center and it has a surround. These neurons are called on center, off center, okay, and on and off, meaning that the neuron will spike a lot. Off, it will be inhibited. Okay, and when you stick your electrode into the LGM, which is the second station in the visual system, you see very, very, very simple circular receptive field, as you would expect, almost from the photoreceptors. Okay, we're looking at a certain receptive field in the whole visual world. And one very unique property is that they have the center surround. Okay, and I don't know if you'll go into lateral inhibition and mechanisms of that, but this is very basic feature. What do we see? Let's say Duron. Who's Duron? So what do we see in C?
In C, you're looking at the visual cortex, C1.
A neuron from the visual cortex. Yes.
It's a simple neuron, and what you can see is that the excitatory field and the inhibitory field is an angle. So you actually, what it did was to mount the excitatory and the inhibitory according to the angle which the cell starts off at.
Okay, so when you take a spot of light and you start moving it around the world, when you hit the given region of the world where this cell is alive, this is the receptive field, and now this is now details of the receptive field. Where is it excited in the center and the surround, and you can already see that it has these different structures. It's not the beautiful circles, but it's now a little bit more elongated than normal. Okay, and what does the line in the middle show?
And right in the middle like that.
Yeah, so there are two lines. So the X's are the excitation, and the triangles are the inhibition, right? And you have some with excitatory center, and some with inhibitory centers, and excitatory surround. So there is this line in the middle.
I think it's that excited us, but I'm not sure.
Okay, so this.
Represents the fact that the simple cortex neurons have direction of stimulus, that they react to a specific direction.
So they call it the receptive field axis, right? They break it in the middle roughly where it's, the symmetry, there is symmetry between the two sides of the cortex, and this means that the best excitation would be a line at this orientation, okay? That goes in this case, and we'll see how the spiking behaves.
But what is the other axis?
It's just the middle of the receptive field of this neuron, okay? So basically the X is in the middle of the receptive field. Okay, near, who is near? Near, shoot. What do we see in E, for example? Why there are many X's here and few X's there?
Because in C, the orientation, the line is symmetric. It falls on the middle of the receptive field. In E, it can be a little bit more up and to the left. So you would have a larger excitatory field below it and above it.
Okay, so this is, also the density, you see that the X's, they draw them in different densities, okay? So there is more, as if there are more receptors and these neurons spike more here, and this is a little bit more diffuse. So it's still an excitatory region, but not so many spikes are spiking here. So you can also get a feeling of the intensity and how dense the receptive field is, okay? And you see all kinds of different neurons. So, for example, what would be the best way to excite the best stimulus, or the most efficient stimulus to excite G, for example? Yeah.
A square placed on the excitatory area.
A square on the excitatory area. Who
Something
thinks
that-
otherwise?
On the entire.
All half of the excitatory area.
Like a
and
square
darkness in the
catching
inner
all the
cortex.
Okay. So,
excitatory.
for example, G, so it's true that you can infer. So you take a spot of light and you put it here and you'll get some spike. You put a larger light, you get more spike and more spikes. But if you actually combine and take advantage of the excitatory and the inhibitory parts, so what is most efficient here is an edge. So they call this an edge detector. But still it's a simple cell. So what would be the criteria for a simple cell?
It's something that has summation, that like if you excite the entire area self-excited, it'll excite more, and if you excite part of it. And
Okay, so they can explain all responses based on, summation, and they have like 3 different criteria of what is summating and what is not.
I have a question though about G, and more speculation. I don't know. As I look at things, it seems to me that G is the more effective way of thinking of figures in the world. I mean, most things don't look like children's drawings that have specific lines stood out. We know contour by like saying that this is different than this. So
Okay.
why isn't G more common, or like do we know that?
Okay, so I'm not sure I fully understand your intuition of what is the best way to capture an image, to understand an image. But so the extreme side of this discussion is what we call grandmother cells. So these are the Simpson cells. So we'll have a cell for each feature of something that we learned in the world, and that will. These are more basic things that images are made of, or the visual world is made of. That's how we think about it, and it's made out of intensity of light, edges of light, contours of light.
So no, I understand that this is much more basic. What I mean is like if I look at a chair, then I mean I can see that the legs look like lines, but usually things are like much bigger. I see that what slot I'm sitting on is the whole area that's different. I mean, it seems to me that what we encounter more in the world are edges than slits. So I don't understand why edges are not more common than slits.
I see. So you think edges are more common in the world? I'm not sure. We have to look at some statistical analysis of images to answer this question. So I don't know whether this is actually more common to the world. This also has to do with a little bit of we mentioned this on the fly of nature versus nurture. So do we expect the neurons in our brain to reflect the statistics of the world? Or is it built in to the machinery of the brain? Like we discussed a little bit, certainly it has aspects of this and that, and both contribute. And certainly if you are raised in an environment with, I don't know, maybe Japan has more edges than Norway or something, then maybe the brains of Norwegians have more edge cells than slit cells or whatever. Something like that. So I don't know exactly how to. Okay, so simple steps. So this and your name again?
Gal.
Gal. So Gal's intuition was that you will see more edge cells in the world, but this table doesn't tell us that, right?
Yeah, I anticipated the table when I.
Okay, so the table tells us that you can find, statistically more or less the same number of cells with symmetrical flanks, excitatory centers, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you go into the cortex, it's...
I wonder how did it's unrecognized, why is it under simple? Like what made it cell be?
Okay.
Simple, although unrecognized.
So what is
Who
that?
dispute?
So somebody read the small details of the 117?
And I related to that. They only saw those cells, simple cell receptor fields, membrane-induced movement.
Yeah.
But did they ever clarify what they saw in the symptom? Because they only saw it with movement, they didn't dare categorize it.
Yeah.
Or didn't risk it. But did they ever clarify what they saw in these?
No. So first, and again your name?
Hannah.
Anna?
Hannah.
Hannah. So what Peter mentioned is that these 117 cells have not been really analyzed. So, and you'll see in the movie, I don't know if you saw, I just showed the when they, they record from a cell, it's highly exciting, go turn on the lamp and start to look for a cell, and when they, they figured out it's a simple cell, but didn't really draw all the...
No, but what makes it a simple cell is that you have the summation and you have the exciter and inhibitor. If it's unrecognized, it means that it didn't give them any pattern.
No, so what they say, they look like simple cells, but we didn't put these stationary stimuli. These are cells we actually analyze with movements, etc., and things like that, and they seem as simple cells, but we didn't categorize them as detailed to say whether it's symmetric, excitatory, inhibitory, etc.
I'm just saying that they might as well be complex, considering the fact that they couldn't recognize specific.
Yeah, but they say they behaved in a simple way, but they didn't have the time to, sit down and categorize.
But they do say that the way they categorized them was by moving stimuli, which is exactly what excites complex cells. So I kind of agree with Hannah. I mean,
We can be mad at the wizard, etc. Okay?
Okay.
They recorded about 300 neurons. About 200 or so were simple, in the sense that they could easily explain it. They tell us, we looked at 233 minus 117 with great detail, and that's the breakdown. The rest looks simple.
They're gonna only help the cells.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, but there still would be categorized as simple.
Well, categorize first on ourselves, then just wait.
Okay. And now, the exciting cell. Okay, this is a complex cell. Who wants to tell us about the complex cell? Let's say Tal. Who is Tal?
Maybe God.
Tal wasn't...
God.
No Tal.
No, I'm God.
My pseudonym.
Vanished. Okay, that's not very nice. Okay, Ayelet. Ayelet, tell us about
So this is an
what do we see here?
this is an example for a complex cell, and they tried several stimuli, and they found that this slit, the horizontal slit, the cell is responsive to it, and they marked this line that above it we see there are only off.
Okay, what does it mean an off response?
Means that the cell responded when the line wasn't shown. No.
Transition from on to off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you turn on the stimulus, and then when you turn it off, then the neuron responds. Okay, so what you see on the x-axis is time, the signal is extracellular spike, and the small lines above it is the... where's my cursor? So this is the stimulus, and when the stimulus is off, then the neuron spikes. And they repeat it twice. Okay, once and twice. So here on the top is the off responses on the slit. Here's another off response and another off response. Great.
And when it's below this line, we have on responses.
Fantastic. Okay. So we see here an on response. You turn this bright light on, you get an on response. Repeat. You go a little bit further away, still you get a nice on response. Okay. So what do we see on the bottom, and why isn't this a simple cell?
And we see in FMG that when they use larger slits wider, then the cell didn't respond at all. So there's a specific
You cannot explain it with this sound.
Exactly. If it would have been a simple cell, what do you expect to get in F?
With the summation of everything
In F, what would you expect to get? A stronger off response. And if it was in G, you would expect to see a very strong on response. Okay, but
Why is stronger off response on F? Isn't the cross is the actual receptive field? I would expect F to be on.
F on.
You said that F we would expect to see an off, a bigger off response.
So if it would have been a simple cell, we would say this is an excitatory, all the X's would be here, all the triangles would be up here, like the G, the edge neuron we talked about earlier on. And then you would expect, you shine all the light here, you get a strong inhibition, and This is inhibition. This is called the rebound effect. When you inhibit a cell, there are all kinds of biophysical phenomena that channels now, after a strong hyperpolarization, they open and the cell bursts. Okay, so there's actually, okay, that's one complex cell. Okay, what does this cell like? Let's see, Ido. Who is Ido? Alvan Ido.
So I think the same on two different orientations, like either orientation is like the horizontal, it's rotated 45 degrees, and they show the same, like a different response to different locations, like if it's above the midline or below.
Okay, so now this neuron likes orientation. You see, this is the receptor field, roughly, this region, and you cannot really draw an excitatory and inhibitory region, but just when the light stimulus is tilted in a given direction, only then, this is now stationary. They put it here, they put it here, they put it here, they put it here. You see a very nice on response. Also strange is that in many cases they see both an on and an off response in the complex cells. Okay, the simple ones you normally have either on or off. And when you're still playing around with light in the receptor field, but once you tilt it just a little bit, it's in the non-preferred direction, and nothing happens, and the highest excitation you get is by moving this, and the cell fires like crazy. Okay? Great. So that's another complex cell. Okay. What is this? David. Yet another complex cell. Okay, what do we see here?
Now they use like edge dictator restriction and
So what's the stimulus? Why is it black now? Before it was white. These were white. Why is it black?
I don't know, that's why it's black or white. The shaded area is like only they're excited. Sorry, I don't understand.
So what do we see here? Explain to us what do we see. Why do they call it a complex cell?
You see that again, I cannot explain like formation. If you turn the edge, cannot explain it by some other with other receptors.
Okay, so the stimulus now is, you see the shaded region is now lower contrast. So basically the stimulus here is on all the receptor field itself. The left side is whiter, more brighter stimulus. The right side is a darker stimulus, and this neuron really likes an edge that's coming from a given orientation. Now you still get some excitation when the edge is tilted, but it disappears completely when it goes off. And it's also direction selected. This was an on response, and now you see an off response when the edge flips from the other side. Okay? So you see all kinds of bizarre and interesting things that have to do with the thing that God mentioned. Okay? About, suddenly it's something which is more than just a spot of light in the receptor field, but we're starting to see features of the world. And edges are features of the world. Okay. Edge detector.
Yeah. I think the issue is that it doesn't matter where you put exactly the edge, as long as the edge is present in the field of view, it will fire just the same.
Okay. Great. And if you go left or you go right within the receptor field?
That's next. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay. So your name? Alex will explain to us figure.
Already did, that's fine. So it doesn't matter if you move the edge along the field of view, it will produce the same firing pattern, as long as it is right tilted, which means it is horizontal. Yeah. No, vertical.
light completely on this cell. Like in eye, there's no activity. Right, complex cell. So we're discovering another complex cell. What is this? This neuron lies a black horizontal rectangle. Okay? Anywhere. In the field, it's tilted a little bit, it won't spike. If it is, you see only on responses in this case. No off response. Great. Off responses. What is this? This is, they like movement also. It's the same, this is the same neuron as in figure 6. Or in figure 7, sorry. And this neuron will be sensitive to a black bar moving in a given direction. Moving from top to down. It will also be responsive if it moves from bottom to up, but only if it's in the horizontal direction. Okay? Questions here? No questions. Okay. And what do we learn from this graph? This is straightforward. Moving.
The size of the electric field, the histogram of the size of the electric field for simple cells and complex cells. And you can see complex cells as wider than the field.
Okay. So this is again just classification. And with this they end part number 1 and they go into part number 2. Okay, part number 2. Shoot, Alon.
Part number 2 deals with what happens when the information comes from both eyes. So they wanted to check that, and they shown one eye some stimulus and the other eye same stimulus or different, and they saw that there is some neurons that use this information different way. Either they contribute, both networks contribute to the firing rate, or one is more dominant than the other, or one is inhibiting the other. And they saw this synergy between the inputs, and they put also the information is gathered to one place.
Okay, great. So now we're recording from the cat's brain, and we put one eye, we close one eye, we look at the responses from looking at one eye, and then we do it for the second eye, and we do it for both receptor fields. This is called binocular. Okay, where the cells are monocular, responding only to a single eye, and binocular. What is ipsilateral and contralateral?
The other side
Is?
Okay. Contralateral is the other side.
So we're recording from left visual cortex?
Yes, and we're from left visual cortex, and we're receiving from the right.
We stimulate the right visual field.
And ipsilateral is from the same.
Okay.
Right to right.
Great. And we all know that
That there is
neurons very fast cross to the other side of the brain. Why does this happen? We don't know. Okay, but this is a very well-known feature of the brain. And in many cases, not everything crosses, of course, some remain more ipsilateral. Okay, so now you can explain what we see.
Mostly the nasal side stays there.
What?
Nasal.
The nasal side. Okay, yeah, they're not going into that now, but okay. So, Lotte, who's Lotte? Alan Lotte. Well, explain to us what do we see here.
Right, so we're seeing spikes from 3 different cells all together, which I didn't, was a little confused by this. I guess it's the shape that differentiates them. So one is a long one, and two is a short one. So they're not small spikes, they're just spikes that belong inside of the tube.
Yes.
How I understand this.
Okay, so what does it mean if a spike is smaller or larger in this technique?
In the way they use it in the figure, that it belongs to
A different cell. But in real life, what does it mean? Do we have neurons with small spike and those with large spike?
Probably they were
No,
closer.
not really.
The
I guess noise, no?
Yeah,
Something
so the size of the spike doesn't really matter. It doesn't tell us anything about the intensity or something like that. All spikes are generally created equal, generally, okay? But with this type of technique, you stick an electrode into the brain, go in, and if there is, an interaction between the tip of the electrode and the cell, normally it is thought that it is close by. You get a least in the first trace, we can see two different neurons, and we also know that they are close by definition, right? Because
They work for the simultaneous.
simultaneously from the same tip of the electrode at the same time, which gives us good control over what?
Their location, their distance.
No, so we know they're close by, but we know, for example, that the response, the different responses are not due to different anesthesia or different. It's a very good control. It also gives us information of simultaneous activity, okay, which because the coding in the brain is happening by population of neurons, it's important if we all speak individually, like we speak in class, or if we speak together, or maybe groups of cells with certain properties we speak together. This will have a very big impact on sensory coding. It has to be done immediately. An animal has to take a decision based on a single trial sometimes, so it's important if two neurons are fighting together or not. Okay, so we have two neurons, and then we also see number 3 coming in. What do we see in the different traces?
So on A, they only simulated one eye and the left eye, and here they only simulated the right eye, and here they simulated both of them. And for neuron 3, for example, we can see that there's a reaction only for both eyes together. So each eye has something that left. And for 1, we can see that there is a reaction for A stimuli, and it's a summation for C.
They don't call it summation, they call it synergy.
More than summation.
Yeah.
So it reacts more strongly when, and these are the same stimuli.
Yes, and you see in neuron number 3 is that it did not respond at all, not to neuron number 1 or 2, so it's a superlinear.
Yeah,
Okay.
and also it's not entirely clear here, like exactly what was the timing where they showed the stimuli. So for 3, maybe like an off response. No.
Yeah, so on the second you see the stimulus here probably.
No, that's time scale, I think.
Yes.
Time scale. Time for 1 second.
Yeah.
That was the scale.
And I think it's where they presented the stimulus as well.
Where's the first?
I don't know. It's not shown. Okay, סטורת עכשיו?
לילה ניסה למכור 5 דקות.
Oh. Okay, so we did so good on the film that the French film, this is a French film crew who is trying to get money for X-ray. We were so beautiful, they want some of us, including me. May you please ask the student to come to the library after the lesson to say hello and hi and wave to the camera. So, those of you brave enough are welcome to join.
I have a question.
Okay.
They talked about when the specific cell type responds better to both sides, so it's important that it's the same stimulus. My question is, once it falls on 2 eyes, isn't it a bit different the way it falls on the 2 retinas? Since we talk about direction and exact location of the stimuli, so if I have stimulus here,
Yes.
so it falls differently on the 2 retinas, a bit different. The direction and the way
So what they said, I'm not sure I completely follow your question, but what they do is they first map the receptive field from both eyes, and only then they place the stimulus within the receptive field of both eyes. So let's say if you are recording from a single neuron, you go from this side, you find the receptive field is here. You close this side, you open, you see that this neuron responds to this part of the world. Then you limit your stimuli to these 2 receptive fields. Okay? And normally are they matched exactly? Pretty much you can say where the receptive field of the left eye, if the neuron is responding to the left eye, will be given from the right eye. Okay, so let's move on. example of binocular synergy, which is, okay, so again, if I ask you to draw a monocular cell or binocular cell, or I think last year in the exam I gave one of these figures, is this a monocular cell? What does this figure show? Is it a synergy or whatever? Okay? So you just need to know the figures of this paper and what are the expression. Okay. Noah. Hi Noah.
Hi.
What do we see in figure 12? Classical figure.
So
Classic stuff, huh? You should be excited to look at this.
very exciting. So they divided the neurons they tested into groups according to the dominance of one eye or the other. And this is the distribution of the eye preference. So the numbers in the x-axis is the groups of the dominance, and in the y-axis is the number of cells. And they showed here that the distribution is similar for the simple and complex cells.
Okay, one thing. What else do we see here? Besides the fact that simple, and they're more simple than complex, and the distribution is generally similar. What else do we see?
Most of the cells fall to the 3-4 category.
Which means?
I think it means that they don't have dominance, because I think that the dominance is in the edges of the groups that are the biggest or the smallest numbers. They are the ones that have dominance, and so most of the cells doesn't have a significant dominance in terms of.
Who thinks otherwise?
A bit shift to the contralateral.
Okay, so what you see here actually, if you look at the distribution, is that it's skewed a little bit to the contralateral side. So there are actually more 3 neurons categorized as 3 than 5. This is a very, very dominant feature of the cortex in general. So there's a preference to the contralateral field of view, or if you talk about any other sense, mostly the contralateral part of the brain dominates the contralateral side of the field of view in this case. And you see this already here, that it is skewed. It's not perfectly centered. If you sum up 1, 2, and 3, it'll be higher than 5, 6, and 7. Okay.
Can you centralize? I mean, this isn't generalized, right? This is only for one cat we're talking about. We're not talking about
No,
generally.
this is not one cat. How many? 14? 40.
39 cats.
39 cats.
39.
That's a lot of cats, huh?
Must have missed that one. All right.
Yeah.
So this is only for cats, though. Again, generalizing it to people would be wrong.
Oh, but this is like the first time ever somebody describes this. I'm telling you that the more and more we describe now with the 2-photon microscope in my lab, I can get 500 neurons easily per day from one eye. And I can clearly see contralateral preference if I would test, binocularity, or in our case we studied the olfactory and auditory system, but.
So you can generalize this to people.
Oh, absolutely. The contralateral side of the brain is more dominant as a stimulant in general. Yeah.
As I understand it, so everything here is the contralateral field, right? So contralateral field of vision. Like all
No. So
information.
each neuron is challenged with ipsi and contra.
But the eyes are in contralateral, no? Like so.
Yeah.
The neurons in the right hemisphere, they only process information from the.
No, not only. They process from both sides.
From both
Eyes.
eyes.
Or both sides of the visual field. Because
Okay, so we're talking about 2 eyes now. We're not talking about where in the visual field.
Because I think that was what you
Yeah,
asked.
so I'm talking about the visual field, right? So the right hemisphere will only process information from the left visual field.
No.
But if I do split brain surgery and I show someone information in the left visual field, I'm expecting only the right hemisphere to see this information. No, that's the
more complex issue of binocularity and how is the full field integrated and things like that. This is a very simple scenario where you record from one side of the brain and you ask, what is the receptor field on this side of the hemisphere that the neuron responds to, not that side of the hemisphere, if there is any. Okay? Then you close that eye and you still record from the side of the neuron where is the receptor field of this cell on the other side of the world, and you compare the intensity of the response. You give the same stimulus. If it responds in a similarly strong way, it's a binocular neuron and will be categorized as 4. If it only responds to one side, and you cannot detect any responses from any receptor field from the other eye, it will be categorized as 7 or 1.
So most
Am
neurons see
I
both.
wrong to say
I
that
think in the middle of your visual field, you wouldn't be able to understand depth if you didn't get from both eyes.
no, but you do get from both eyes because there is like my right eye can see also the contralateral and the extralateral.
Okay.
Like only the temporal crescent, so I think she's right. Like the area that they don't both see, so like the right crescent would go to only to your left.
Sometimes this is the only visual field. I mean, the issue of understanding of the sight of the world is much more general concept than general concept. I mean, people can know the right hand and right visual field, and it's not only the visual cortex involved in this.
I think the discussion is far more than what they show here, what you're talking about. Okay, you're talking how do I, with my right eye, how can I see things in the left visual field, right?
Don't check.
No, just forget about just the hemispheres and the areas in the world. So, from what I learned, maybe I learned wrong, but the right hemisphere processes information from the left visual field.
Not only, no.
Everything that comes from the model part is into alpha. Everything that is in temporal is alpha.
Exactly.
So from the left hemisphere.
So here you see that most cells, for example, in the right, can see all the field. Now, okay, so one cell in, for example, right hemisphere can see the whole field. That's 4. Right?
So they can see from both
Yes.
eyes.
Yes.
But not, but if they
They
see
get
a very
input
small
from both
area.
eyes.
Of what? Say what?
Yeah, you can get information from both eyes only from one side of the visual field.
No?
Not all
No.
optic fibers cause the kite. Some also.
Right.
No, but
So-
she's not, especially
Lo
with
tengo,
that,
¿sabes?
it
I
feels
think it'll be much simpler if you're...
I have information. This is taking too long. I have information in the left visual field. It will go to the like the outer area of the like of my carotid of my eye, like right, of my ipsilateral eye, and to the inner area of the contralateral eye, and these are the fibers that will go to the right hemisphere. So.
because you are the other half of
So information from the left visual field goes to both eyes, and this information goes to the right.
Not always.
No.
Right one.
From each eye, the information goes to both hemispheres.
Right, because each
Yeah,
eye
but
gets
she's talking
information
about-
from both sides of the field.
Okay, but here they check only the main area of a vision of a cat. They never
She's not
play
talking
with
about
the
what
parts.
they're talking about.
Okay,
It's
very
a more
good.
general
because
question.
of the depth, causes the person to know what it is and how deep.
Okay, let's go on. I think this is a little bit beyond the level of discussion of this book.
Okay, maybe we can go.
Okay, and I think you should talk about this. I think with Uli, I'm not sure how deep you will go into the basic explanation of visual fields, etc. But you can certainly go deep into these issues with Uli. Okay? Okay, now to the last part 3 of the paper before we finish. So let's talk about this quickly. Basically, what do we see here? Left.
Okay, we see both the centimeters in the factor, so it's, I mean,
this image captures a lot of information. Okay, it's not just an example of one cell, it's an example of one penetration site. Throughout this thing, they stick the electrode from the top of the brain, okay, from here. They stick it in, they go in until they find the neuron. So the small slits is background noise. You just hear it, it's like a rachash, you hear it in the background.
Background noise, it means that they understand that it's not that close to actually what you're measuring.
It's not crisp enough to be a single neuron, but you still hear the activity from the environment. Close enough to the cells, and then they play all kinds of lines, and they see that this region prefers this orientation. And the big lines is the neurons, when they hit the neuron. Numbers are next to the slits, binocular, okay, from 1 to 7, and they go deep, right? They cross the white matter.
What's white matter?
What's white matter?
Fibers from the cell. You have the cell body, and you have the axons that are sent to subcortical areas of the brain.
The highways of the brain
Information.
are axons. Okay, not cell body.
Right. So gray matter would be the not white matter.
Exactly. This is cell body, synapses, dendrites. Okay.
So they're not mixed together. Axons and dendrites.
So within the gray matter, you also find the axons, of course, bring in their synapses. But in the white matter,
Just axons.
mainly axons, and why is it called white?
It's white.
Myelin.
The myelin sheath. Okay. Well, okay. What is this part here with the round thing on the bottom? Yeah.
So the lesion,
Mhm.
afterwards can also reconstruct how exactly the
So just think of the heroic nature of this experiment. They have a cat. A cat is an expensive animal. It's a big animal. You stick in the electrode. You record for 10, 12, 15 hours. Actually, with cats, because it's actually, I don't know about the days of 1962. And these days, if you are going to do an experiment on one of these animals, very complicated. Normally, it's like a 4-day-long experiment with teams of students that are rotating to extract as much as you can before you kill the animal. Okay, certainly it's a month. But then after the experiment, they do a lesion at the end of the track, and there are also images actually in the paper where you can see they do histology of the brain. And they recover where they were exactly in each neuron of the. This is a really impressive, technically, to recover where you were exactly, what the distance between the different neurons, etc., etc. And actually, they have everything here. Yeah.
Wouldn't the lesion affect the brain?
Yeah, that's what they do at the end of the experiment. So you record, you advance the electrode, you record, you advance the electrode, you record. At the end of the day, after 20 hours of recordings, you got to this side, you zap the brain, you put a strong current, and then it causes damage to the brain, so that you kill the cat.
What's the point of the lesion exactly?
just to mark.
No,
To
actually.
know where you were,
Where-
where exactly you were, what's the distance between the sites, etc.
Can they see exactly where they
You can see the track in a huge electrode like that. So the electrodes we use now of glass pipettes, for example, you cannot recover the track. But if you stick an extracellular electrode inside, you can.
How big is an electrode?
So it depends. You get many different types of shanks. Now you have amazing materials where they print the electrodes, like 64 electrodes. Here it's only one. There you can have now today you can have 64, 128 electrodes printed on a single shank, and so it depends what exactly you want on your electrodes. It can be from a few 100 microns to a few hundred microns normal. Okay.
And this, sorry, what is the 1 to 7? How is it represented by the
So, yeah, so 1 to 7 are the categories of the binocularity. We talked about that before. So a neuron would be categorized as 1 to 7, and this is the, so basically you have a lot of information here, giving you a feeling of their experiment. You actually have, I don't remember all the details, but I don't know, these are neurons recorded simultaneously, these are not, etc., blah, 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 blah. But you see the orientation of the axis that we saw in the stinted cells initially.
That's the idea of like columns, because you see when you're perpendicular to the white matter,
Exactly.
and you have the same orientation.
Exactly. So then they look also at gross anatomy. I just want to wrap up. Gross anatomy, etc., and they will they can reconstruct or think that the neuron is made out of columns. All of these neurons within the same column share very similar response profiles, etc. And the nice thing is that if you go to these, this is a cat where they did the experiment twice, 2 penetration sites, one here and one here. And if you go oblique to the, vertical to the brain surface, you see most neurons have the same property. But then at some point you see it shifts.
You're crossing to them.
If you go on the side, from this region of the brain, you see that they change receptor fields all the time. And this probably reflects the fact that we're in different columns of the brain, which are organized next to the, in a vertical way relative to the individual. Okay, so this I let you to figure on your own. This is just the receptor fields, how they overlap. This is actually a very important figure because it shows that the receptor fields are not topographically organized very nicely. At the micro scale, there is a lot of jitter. And this is actually important for visual coding. We're not going to that. And of course, the classical figure you see in every textbook is this one, where they try to make sense out of what they saw and put it into an hypothetical explanation. And to this day, it's still not proven completely, or we know it's not like that. Okay, so now I just want to show you the movie, and we will end. Okay, so this is from the textbook. Oh, I hope you can hear.
In this classic experiment by David Hubel and Torsten Wiesel, a microelectrode is implanted in the primary visual cortex, or V1, of an anesthetized cat to record the receptive field of a single neuron. A bar of light is shined on various locations in the cat's visual field. The microelectrode is connected to a speaker so that each action potential is registered as a clicking sound. The neuron fires
raise them not black.
Like simple cells, complex cells are highly orientation selective. As indicated by the click, the further the orientation strays from the preferred angle, the less the cell exhibits an excitatory response.
Think about this, huh? 12 hours of recordings like that.
Complex cells
Filming
respond to
on
either light bars on a dark background or dark bars on a light background. Thus, complex cells can be considered more abstract line edge detectors than simple cells. They respond to the line edge on or off anywhere in the receptive field, as long as they are in a particular orientation. Hubel and Wiesel proposed that the receptive field of a simple cell can arise from the convergent input of a series of LGN neurons. The circular receptive fields of the LGN neurons, represented by the concentric circles, combine to form the receptive field of the simple cell. The on centers of LGN neurons, represented by smaller circles filled with triangles, combine to form the on center of the simple cell, as indicated by the rectangular dashes. Likewise, the receptive field of a complex cell may depend upon the input of simple cells earlier in the visual processing pathway. Here, the dashes represent the receptive field of the complex cell, which is created by the convergent input of the receptive fields of multiple simple cells that have the same orientation preference. This feed-forward model, where a receptive field of a neuron is shaped primarily by neurons at an earlier visual processing stage, is a logical inference from the experiments just viewed. But the feed-forward model, as compelling as it may be, has yet to be definitively proven through experiments.
Okay, great. So, with this we end our introduction to sensory systems, and we start Wednesday at 12 with Professor Udi Zohari, and you have a series of lectures on the visual system. Then we move to somatic sensation. I will be in class in the back, behave quietly, won't make too much noise, and I will be back teaching my system later on after a few months. So enjoy the course, and looking forward.
Don't argue with me, I have something else.
I just drew something else to do that.
It wasn't non-visual. Much of a wider camera. In between the breaks. I'm not sure what. Email.
Yeah.
I'm in the system. I wasn't until the very, very end of last week. It started to think. But I'm here. And I guess it's Thursday. So I'm here today. Thursday I'm in 10 hours. So I don't know. Don't need any classes. If you don't teach a class tomorrow.
No. So this is after the seminar thing?
Yes.
Oh,
okay. It's not a real class. Okay. I'm registered.
no, fine. This course, you have to give a single lecture sometime during the semester, and basically you have to decide what's the topic with me. You're doing your thesis work with a teacher, so it has to be outside the field that you do the topic. You have to choose any topic in all that you want, and you give a talk in front of class. You're going to have 2 days of lectures at the end of the semester. That's not looking very good.
Oh, okay.
We're going to have 2 days of intense, like 2.5 hour lectures. There are only 8 students in class or something. So I'll bring exactly the instructions. We met last week.
Yes, I spoke to us in the class. And she said it was 15 minutes. And you mentioned that. I didn't realize that there was nothing else.
Nothing else in
Okay. Okay.
Nothing. You have enough on your head.
So I don't know if I need to sign in or not even use the machine to get it typed.
Here. Okay, so here the rules here in this class is that you must attend so if you go on Moodle when you register.
I'm in Moodle already. So I can
There's a file called schedule of the course.
Okay.
And you go to wave and say hello to the cameras if you want to be famous in Paris. Ah.
Dear friend, your favorite will be, if you help me, I can help you by raising a lot of money.
Yeah. Go help her raise a lot of money. Good. Basically, this file is on the. So you have the date and the topic of the lecture. This was the first two lectures. Wherever there are names of students, you must attend. Okay? I'm taking names. I'm taking names.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll take a point off your final grade. So this you have to attend. These discussions are 10% of your final grade, and all you need to do is attend and read the paper.
Okay.
The other 10% for the students of the computational program, they have to give a lecture in front of class, and the non-computational students have to submit a 2-page paper on a paper. Some paper, they have to decide what it is, and then 80% of the final.
I read through the syllabus. I have access to some, but not everything.
So this is a different topic. Where you have students means that and the names. So I have to fix this here. Wherever you have names, everyone must attend. And we did one paper now, which is like a classical paper. We're going to be another one, and the papers are also for the final.
Okay, so in terms of the syllabus, is there reading in a particular book? Does it follow the book, or is lectures usually independent of the book?
No. So if you go into Moodle, Udi will tell you have to read chapter X, Y, and Z, these pages to be prepared, plus my lecture.
Okay.
Also, Nikki will come in, he will say, please read chapter this and that. That's the reading.
But there's no official textbook for the class.
So we changed. So officially it's Kandel, but there are other things which are, for example, the auditory part is a little bit, the Kandel is not. So you have to know the Kandel, which is very few pages, but we give you much more.
Okay.
But Kandel would be your entry point to that.
Right, and that's on the syllabus.
It will be on the syllabus as we go along, each teacher.
Right, but just so I can get the book.
The book is here, yeah, it's in the library and it's here.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, good luck.